In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to use database functions in Excel. Now, before you continue with this video, hopefully you've seen my previous video where I demonstrate the advanced filter feature under the data ribbon. And in using that advanced filter, we have to establish a criteria range. Well, database functions take advantage of that criteria range and will allow us to calculate averages, max, mins, counts based on that same criteria. So let's get started. I'll start by first establishing a criteria range by selecting these rows, and then I'll go to Home, and we're going to insert some sheet rows above our data. So to give us an example to work with, let's say I want to calculate the average salary for employees from Austin and New Orleans who earn more than $85,000 a year. Since I want to filter on location and annual salary, I'll have to grab these titles and put them up here in my criteria range. And notice they don't have to be, I'll shrink that up a little bit, they don't have to be lined up with the titles below in the data. And in fact, if I wanted to, I could move them all the way over here to the left. So they can be anywhere basically on your spreadsheet, but you do need a blank row between your criteria range and your data. So now for my criteria, I mentioned I want to see people from Austin and New Orleans. And notice I have this as an OR criteria, and it was greater than 85,000. And I need to do that twice because I want people whose salary is greater than 85,000 that are from both Austin and New Orleans. And now at this point, I'm ready to filter the list in place if that's what I was interested in. I could run to advanced. It's grabbing, oh, interesting, only through L. So that's why it's always worth checking. It's grabbing my list range of A7, and now I typed M107. My criteria range is going to be right here, those 6 cells. And I'm going to go ahead and filter the list in place. And now I have only employees from New Orleans and Austin whose salary is greater than 85,000. Now, the point of this video, though, is we want to take a look at these database functions. And here's what they are. If I hit equal and type a D, and if you scroll down far enough, you get DCOUNT, DCOUNT A. There'll be a DMAX, DMIN. There is at the very top a DAVERAGE. These are our database functions, and there's also a DSUM. They all work exactly the same, but of course they're going to calculate based on which one you choose, whether you're going to sum or average. I think in my example I said let's take an average of the salary for the people that we currently have filtered. So I'll hit DAVERAGE here, and each one of those database functions wants 3 things. Where's your database? That's all of this data. What field am I going to take an average of? And then where's your criteria range, which is we just created over here. So for my database, I can simply select through all of our data. Now it's a little dangerous in that our data is filtered because it actually goes to 107. So I'll go ahead and type in 107 on my selection. I'm not going to copy this formula anywhere, so I'm not going to worry about absoluting these cell references. Now for the field, there's a couple ways you can identify the field that I'm going to take an average of. One is simply to click on the heading for that field. So K7 is the annual salary, and that's the field I want to take an average of. The other way I can do it is to go count the columns over in my data range. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's column 11. I can just type an 11 right there, and then it'll take an average of that particular column. And the third way is you can actually type the words, but again, you have to type it exact. You can't have any misspellings, and that will also take an average of that column. So very often I do it the first way, which was simply to select on that column. That's what I want to take an average of. That's my field. The third is your criteria range, and basically that's right here. It's the same criteria range we use when we do an advanced filter. So now I'll close that formula up. I hit enter, and that is the average salary for the employees who meet the criteria in my criteria range, and I can format that with the accounting format. Now, I don't have to have the data filtered in order for this database function to work. I can run up to the data ribbon and remember clear, here's how I get rid of the filter, and I still have my salary, average salary for the people, the employees who meet that criteria. And the other cool thing is under advanced filter, when I change this criteria, the list doesn't refilter itself. You have to actually click advanced and go through those steps, whereas this function actually does. So I will just remove the $85,000 requirement for just the Austin people, and you'll recognize that this number will change. So I'll run over here and hit delete, and now that number has changed because that's a new criteria. It's everybody from Austin and only those employees from New Orleans greater than 85,000. So that's the average salary given that criteria. And if I put my greater than 85,000 back in here, then of course I'll get my number back. So that's D average. Or right down here, I could also do equal D count. How many people meet that criteria? So D count, and guess what? It wants the exact same three things. And so I can select through all my data. I'm going to hold down Shift and hit the Control down arrow. And notice this time, because my data is not filtered, it does go through M107 in this case. And now I have to choose what field do I want to do a count on. So DCOUNT is going to count things that have numbers in it. So I'm okay in this case choosing the ID field. There's no blank cells in there. So if whatever my criteria is, I'm just going to count the ID field. And then finally the criteria, and again, it's just the criteria range we've established when we did our advanced filter. So I can close that up, and now when I hit enter, I'll get a count. That's a count of how many people meet this criteria. So just to demonstrate one more, we'll run over here and do DMAX. Who has the, or not who, but what is the largest salary of the person or the employees who meet that criteria? Well, again, we'll just select through the data. I'm going to hold down the Shift, hit the Control key and the down arrow. So I go to 107, comma, what field do I want to find the max value in? Well, in this case, annual salary. And then what is the criteria that I'm using? I will select that range, and there's the max salary of the people who meet that criteria. One thing that makes the D functions kind of cool is the fact that I can change the criteria and have these reflect the new answers. So I could, as long as we have location, I want to know home and with the salary of less than, let's do 80,000. So given that situation, there's the average salary of people who meet this criteria. There's 100 of them. That doesn't seem right. After some investigation, I just ran into an error that's easy to make, in that I had 2 rows of criteria. I had an OR condition. Well, then I just converted it to 1 row of criteria, and yet over here, my criteria range, if I double click on this and click on the purple criteria, it's grabbing both rows, which means that's asking for, show me all the people from the home location with a salary less than 80,000 or anybody, because I've got no criteria. So that's why we're getting 100 people, because basically it's all of the data at that point. So I need to fix this criteria range on each one of these. So I'll select A1 to B2, and then right here I'll have to fix the criteria range on this one. So I guess I kind of defeated my point of how handy these are. It's handy as long as your criteria stays within the same number of rows. And I'll fix this one, double click on criteria, and now I'll be okay. So there we go. So now the max salary is 60,000. There's 7 of those people, and the average is 33,000. But I had to change the criteria to only include the 1 row, which is an AND condition. So that's it for these functions, although let me mention a couple areas I see students will make mistakes, and that is when you're choosing the database, if your data is filtered, be careful that you still grab all of the data, the full range. And the second mistake, and I don't know why, but people never can remember what to choose for this field. So in the field parameter, we're going to grab the area that we're trying to do an average, max, sum, count on. So you just grab the column heading that we're going to, in this case, take an average of. You can either select the column heading, or as I mentioned, you can put the number of the column in the data range of your database. And finally, the criteria, not so hard. You're just grabbing that range of the criteria you've set up for your advanced filter. So that's it.